She never planned on becoming a headline. Alina thought she'd finally escaped her toxic ex, the kind of man who looked perfect in public but controlled everything in private. She changed cities, names, and jobs just to start over. But one night, while running from him again, she crashed straight into a stranger's world, a world made of power, money, and rules she didn't understand. That stranger was Alexander Cole, a billionaire with more enemies than friends, and a life so polished it couldn't afford a scandal. What started as a desperate attempt to hide turned into a dance that would change everything. By morning, her face was everywhere, her name trending for all the wrong reasons, and the man who saved her life, he might just be the one capable of ruining it too. Rain hammered against the city streets as Alina sprinted down the block, soaked and breathless. Her sneakers slapped against the pavement, the cold cutting through her clothes. Behind her, Ethan's voice carried over the noise, calm, steady, and terrifyingly close. "You can't keep running, Alina." She didn't answer. She just kept moving. At the corner, she spotted a bright hotel entrance glowing against the storm. The banner read, "Charity Gala for Children's Hope Foundation." Men in suits and women in gowns hurried inside, stepping out of black cars under umbrellas. Perfect. She blended in behind a delivery worker, slipped through the side door and didn't stop until she was in. The lobby buzzed with movement. Staff, guests, flashes from photographers. A woman wearing a headset pointed at her. "You, grab those glasses now!" Before Alina could respond, someone shoved a tray into her hands and pushed her toward the hallway. No one questioned her clothes. No one asked who she was. They just assumed she was working. She entered the kitchen, packed with chefs shouting over one another. Trays of food, silver platters, the hiss of steam. It was chaos, but organized chaos. Alina moved fast, head down, keeping her eyes on the next door. Then she heard it again. His voice. Alina. He was inside. She ducked between two staff members, slipping through the swinging doors before he could see her. The ballroom opened in front of her. Gold lights, polished floors, and hundreds of guests. It was another world. She steadied her grip on the tray, forcing herself to walk like she belonged. A waiter brushed past. "Hey, take these glasses to the main table." Without a word, she took the set of champagne flutes and kept moving. The music was loud, the laughter louder. She could see her reflection in the mirrored wall, out of place, soaked but unnoticed, for now. Across the room, she noticed a man standing near the stage. His posture was calm, the kind that made people unconsciously move aside. She didn't know him, but something about his presence made the noise fade for a second. Then behind her, a door opened. Ethan stepping into the ballroom, scanning faces. Alina tightened her grip on the tray, pretending to serve drinks as she slipped between tables. She couldn't run again. Not here. Her eyes flicked back toward the stranger near the stage. She didn't know his name, but right now, he looked like the only exit she had left. Her ex burst through the kitchen door, scanning the crowd. She froze, every instinct screaming at her to move. The stranger was still watching her, unreadable, and just like that, she knew what she had to do. Get closer to him, fast. If Ethan saw her first, it was over. Before she moved, her mind flashed back to the months of running, the changed phone numbers, the new apartments that never stayed secret for long. He'd tracked her across 3 cities, always one step behind. Tonight was supposed to be the end of it, but now in this room full of strangers and billionaires, her only chance at survival was standing a few feet away, a man whose name she didn't even know. Alina froze in the middle of the ballroom, her fingers still clutching the tray she'd forgotten to return. The chandeliers above sparkled like 1,000 cameras, catching every move she made. Around her, the crowd of New York's elite mingled, laughed, and raised champagne glasses worth more than her rent. She didn't belong here, but at least here she could hide in plain sight, among the noise, the light, and the crowd. Across the room, a woman in diamonds waved impatiently. "Can you bring more glasses, please?" Alina nodded, pretending to be one of the servers. Every second counted. The farther she stayed from the kitchen, the longer she could breathe. But that illusion cracked when a familiar voice echoed her name, soft and venomous, slicing through the music. The fear she'd been running from found her again. Her eyes darted around for an exit. Instead, she saw him, a tall man standing near the stage, posture calm, gaze powerful. Even from a distance, Alexander radiated the kind of authority that made people move without him asking. He wasn't smiling. He looked like the only person who didn't belong to the party either. Something in his presence felt safe and dangerous all at once. Alina didn't have time to think. Her ex had spotted her, pushing through the crowd, anger painted across his face. The room spun, panic taking over logic. She took a single step toward the stranger, praying he'd understand, because in a sea of strangers and flashing lights, she was about to do something that would turn her whole life into a headline. Alina didn't think, she acted. Her ex's voice grew louder behind her, cutting through the crowd like a warning siren. She reached the man in the black suit and whispered, almost pleading, "Please, just pretend you know me." For a moment, his eyes, grey and unreadable, studied her, measuring truth against fear. Then, without hesitation, Alexander set his glass down and took her hand. The music shifted as he pulled her into the center of the floor. Every head turned, but his expression didn't waver. "Follow my lead," he murmured, his voice calm enough to silence her panic. The moment their hands met, she felt her pulse sink to the rhythm of the dance, not the chase. People began whispering, the cameras flashing. What started as an act was quickly turning into a scene. Her ex stopped at the edge of the floor, confusion twisting into rage. Alexander noticed. Without missing a step, he moved closer, placing a protective hand on her waist. "Don't look back," he said quietly, his tone not commanding but assuring. For the first time that night, she exhaled. In a single motion, the man she'd never met had built a wall between her and everything she feared. They swayed through the crowd, the music drowning out her thoughts. Alexander's presence felt both unreal and grounding, like calm in the middle of chaos. When the song ended, his hand lingered just long enough for her to feel the power behind his restraint. The ballroom applauded, oblivious to the storm brewing underneath. And just like that, every camera had caught the moment that would change both their lives by morning. When the song ended, the room went silent. All eyes were on them, especially on him. Alexander didn't flinch under the attention. He was the kind of man used to being watched. With one hand still on Alina's arm, he guided her off the dance floor, like it was just another meeting he controlled. "Don't turn around," he said quietly. She didn't need to ask why. She already knew her ex was still there. His voice was calm, almost detached. "Who is he asked. "Someone I should have left years ago," she muttered, trying to sound braver than she felt. Alexander's expression hardened. He nodded once, signaling something to a man near the exit. Within seconds, her ex was gone. The efficiency was unnerving. Like this wasn't the first time Alexander had handled chaos with a simple gesture. "So you're safe now," he said, though she wasn't sure if that was a promise or a command. She took a step back, ready to disappear, but the first camera flash hit before she could move. Reporters shouted questions, security tried to block them, and Alexander turned his face away from the light. "Stay close," he said, taking her hand again. It was too late. The picture had already been taken, and by morning, both their lives would be on every screen in the city. By the next morning, Alina's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Her face was everywhere. Gossip sites, morning shows, and a dozen viral posts calling her the mystery woman with Alexander Cross. The internet had decided who she was before she even woke up. What was meant to be a moment of survival now looked like a scandal. Across town, Alexander's office was chaos. His PR team threw headlines on screens, demanding statements. "Who is she? Is it serious? How long has it been going on?" He ignored all of it, scanning photo after photo, knowing the narrative had already slipped out of his control. One night of protection had become a media storm. Meanwhile, Alina hid in her apartment, deleting message after message. Some called her lucky, others worse. Even her ex had texted, "You really moved on fast, huh?" It wasn't fear this time. It was anger. He'd twisted her silence into something cheap. But the worst part? Everyone believed him. By noon, Alexander's name was trending worldwide, and his investors were demanding answers. He made one call, to her. "We need to talk." His voice sharp, clipped. All business. Alina hesitated. She'd spent months running from one man's control. Now another one wanted her attention. The difference, this time she had no idea what he really wanted from her. Alina met Alexander in the lobby of his downtown building, surrounded by glass walls and security guards who looked more like soldiers. He didn't waste time. "Do you have any idea what that night caused?" he asked, his tone controlled but cold. She crossed her arms. "You think I planned this?" It wasn't fear anymore, just exhaustion. He slid a tablet across the table. Photos, headlines, the word scandal in bold letters. "My team is doing damage control," he said. "But your face is tied to mine now." She let out a nervous laugh. "I didn't ask to be." His expression softened slightly. I know. That's why I'm offering protection. Protection? She repeated, skeptical. This isn't a movie, Mr. Cross. I don't need a bodyguard. He leaned forward, calm but firm. No, but you need someone who understands what exposure can destroy. Trust me, I've seen people lose everything over rumors. She hated how logical he sounded. He stood, straightening his jacket. I'll have my team reach out with details. Before leaving, he glanced back once. This isn't about control, it's about safety. Alina watched him walk away, torn between wanting to trust him and wanting her life back. But something in his voice lingered. A mix of regret and power that didn't sound like a man used to caring. By afternoon, Alina's inbox was flooded again, but this time with something worse than gossip. A private number had sent her pictures of herself outside her building, walking to the store, even standing by her window. Fear hit harder now. Someone was watching. She blocked the number, but the messages kept coming. You can't hide forever. At the same time, Alexander's security chief dropped a folder on his desk. She's being tracked, he said, and whoever's behind it knows how to stay anonymous. Alexander didn't reply, but the shift in his expression said enough. In his world, privacy was power, and someone had just crossed the line. Across town, Alina stared at her reflection, realizing the story had turned dangerous. It wasn't just about exposure anymore. Her ex had been quiet since the photos went viral. Too quiet. And now she couldn't tell if it was him, a tabloid stalker, or one of Alexander's rivals digging for leverage. Either way, she was back to living in constant fear. Her phone rang again. Alexander. Pack a bag, he said simply. You're coming with me. She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped. Whoever was behind the messages knew too much, and maybe, just maybe, the only way to survive the rumor was to step straight into the world that caused it. Alina followed the directions Alexander sent and ended up in an underground parking garage beneath one of his buildings. He was already waiting by a black SUV, sleeves rolled up, phone in hand. You didn't have to come, he said, but his tone suggested the opposite. You didn't really give me a choice, she replied, crossing her arms. Inside the car, silence filled the space between them. This isn't kindness, he finally said. It's protection. You're involved in something bigger now, and I can't ignore it. Alina looked out the window, half smiling. You're making it sound like I joined a secret war. He didn't smile back. In my world, reputation is war. When they reached his penthouse, she hesitated at the door. The place was spotless. Too perfect. Too quiet. So what am I supposed to do here? She asked. Stay out of sight, he said simply. Let my team handle the rest. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Great. A golden cage. Alexander met her gaze for the first time that night. You're free to leave whenever you want, he said, almost challenging her. She didn't respond. Both of them knew she had nowhere else to go, and though she wouldn't admit it, there was something in his calm that made the fear a little easier to bear. The elevator opened to a panoramic view of the city, floor-to-ceiling glass, dim lighting, and silence so deep it almost hummed. Alina stepped out slowly, unsure if she should be impressed or uncomfortable. You live here alone? She asked. Alexander nodded. Most people who chase power end up that way. His words hung in the air longer than expected. He showed her to a guest room larger than her entire apartment. Everything looked expensive. Minimalist decor, neutral tones, no signs of life. There's food in the fridge, clothes in the closet. Use whatever you need, he said, standing in the doorway. She wanted to thank him, but the words got stuck somewhere between gratitude and pride. That night, Alina sat on the balcony, staring at the glowing skyline. It was strange. Up here, the world looked peaceful, but inside, her chest still felt like chaos. She thought of the messages, the photos, the fear that never quite left her body. For the first time in weeks, though, she wasn't listening for footsteps outside her door. When she finally fell asleep, the city was just beginning to wake, and though she didn't trust Alexander yet, the steady hum of security cameras outside her window felt like the closest thing to safety she'd known in a long time. Somewhere below, he watched the live feed, making sure she could sleep without looking over her shoulder. It was past midnight when Alina heard muffled voices echoing through the hallway. She followed the sound and stopped just before the living room. Alexander was on the phone, pacing near the window, his voice low but sharp. No, I don't care what the board says, he snapped. She's not leaving. Handle the press differently. He hung up hard, pressing his fingers to his temples. For the first time, he didn't look untouchable. You shouldn't be up, he said when he noticed her reflection in the glass. Couldn't sleep, she answered. The walls here feel too quiet. He let out a short laugh. tired and humorless. Quiet's a luxury most people don't appreciate until they lose it. Alina leaned against the doorframe. "You're not fighting for me, are you?" she asked softly. "You're fighting for your reputation." His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "In my position, there's no difference." It was brutally honest and strangely comforting. At least he didn't pretend to be a hero. Still, there was something in his voice, a flicker of something personal beneath all that control. She couldn't name it yet, but she felt it, the tension between power and humanity. And as she walked back to her room, she realized she wasn't the only one trapped behind walls she hadn't built. The next morning, Alina found Alexander in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, pouring coffee like it was a business transaction. "You're up early," he said without looking at her. "Didn't sleep much," she replied. He handed her a cup without asking how she liked it. "You're not easy to manage, you know that." She smirked. "Good thing I'm not one of your employees." He shot her a look that was half warning, half curiosity. "You really think this is easy for me?" he said. "You've turned my entire company upside down in 48 hours. She sipped her coffee. "Guess chaos doesn't like competition." His eyes narrowed, but for the first time, there was a hint of amusement behind them. Later, during a call with his PR director, she overheard him say, "She's not a liability, she's a person." The words caught her off guard. Maybe he didn't mean them the way they sounded, but for someone like Alexander, empathy wasn't part of the brand. And that brief crack in his armor made her see him differently. That evening, he joined her on the balcony, both silent for a while. "You don't scare easily," he said. "You don't either," she answered. Their eyes met, steady, searching. For the first time, neither was trying to win, and that quiet understanding between them, unexpected, unspoken, was exactly what made everything feel more dangerous. 2 days later, Alexander's assistant burst into his office, holding a tablet. "It's out," she said, her voice shaking. He glanced down, and there it was. Security footage from the gala. Him dancing with Alina, her hand on his chest. The internet was already tearing it apart, one frame at a time. By the time Alina saw it, her phone was blowing up with messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Headlines screamed across every feed, "Billionaire's secret affair exposed." And who is the woman who stole Alexander Cole's heart? She turned off the screen, feeling her stomach twist. It wasn't just gossip. It was exposure. Alexander stood before the massive windows of his office, watching the city burn with rumors. "Someone inside leaked it," his PR head said. "We'll trace it." But his focus had shifted. "Damage is done," he muttered. "Now we control the narrative." He didn't realize Alina was standing at the door, hearing every word. That night, as she scrolled through thousands of comments calling her everything but innocent, she realized something. She wasn't running from a controlling ex anymore. She was trapped in a new kind of cage, one made of headlines, hashtags, and half-truths. And unlike before, this time the whole world was watching. By morning, the corporate sharks had smelled blood. Anonymous emails landed in every major newsroom, each twisting Alina's story further. Some claimed she'd been Alexander's mistress, others that she was a whistleblower leaking private deals. It didn't matter that none of it was true. What mattered was how fast it spread. At the office, whispers followed Alexander everywhere. Board members made polite smiles in public, but behind closed doors, they were circling. "She's becoming a liability," one said. "You need to distance yourself before it gets worse." Alexander didn't answer, but his silence wasn't agreement. It was calculation. Alina, meanwhile, walked through downtown trying to stay unnoticed, her hood up, her phone on airplane mode. But the damage was done. Strangers recognized her on the subway, whispering as she passed. She wasn't a person anymore. She was a rumor with a face, and that realization cut deeper than any insult. When Alexander called her that evening, his tone was calm but heavy. "Don't go outside again," he said, "not until I figure this out." She wanted to protest, to tell him she wasn't his problem, but something in his voice stopped her. Maybe it wasn't control this time. Maybe it was protection. It started with a headline that made Alina's heart stop. "Ex-boyfriend of viral woman speaks out." Her stomach turned as she pressed play on the interview. Ethan smiled at the camera, polished and practiced. "I only hope she finds peace," he said smoothly. "She's been through a lot and she tends to attract the wrong kind of men." Every word dripped manipulation. He framed himself as the caring ex, the one she used and betrayed. Within hours, podcasts, gossip shows and influencers were praising his composure. The internet that had once mocked him now painted him as the victim. And Alina became the unstable woman who ruined powerful men. Alexander watched the broadcast from his office, expression unreadable. "He's clever," his advisor said. "He's not clever," Alexander replied coldly. "He's dangerous." He shut off the screen, already calling his head of security. Whatever game Ethan was playing, it had just crossed into his world, and that was a mistake. When Alina saw her ex's face trending again, the fear returned like muscle memory. She'd escaped his grip once, but now he was back in the spotlight, shaping her story for millions to believe. She didn't know it yet, but this time, she wasn't the only one ready to fight him. By the next morning, Alexander's office was chaos. His PR team crowded around the conference table, throwing out strategies to control the scandal. "Distance yourself from her," one insisted. "Issue a statement denying any personal connection." Alexander leaned back in his chair, unmoved. "And what happens to her when I do that?" Silence followed. No one had an answer. Alina sat in a quiet corner of the penthouse, watching the same story unfold across every network. The woman behind the billionaire, the liar who fooled New York. It was all noise now, but still it hurt. When Alexander arrived hours later, his jacket undone, eyes tired, she asked softly, "You're going to drop me, aren't you?" He paused, studying her face. "No," he said finally. "I'm going to do the opposite." Within hours, his decision was everywhere. Alexander Cole had taken a personal leave, refusing to abandon someone being publicly destroyed. Investors panicked, the stock dipped, and yet he didn't flinch. He'd made his choice, and for once it wasn't the safe one. That night, when he told her, "You're staying here until this ends," she didn't argue. Maybe because she was too exhausted to fight, or maybe because, for the first time, someone had chosen her when the world said she wasn't worth the trouble. 2 days later, Alina found Alexander in his study, sleeves rolled up, pacing between papers. "You can't stay hidden forever," he said. "And I can't keep fighting rumors with silence." She crossed her arms. "So, what's your brilliant plan this time?" He met her gaze. "Work for me." She blinked. "You're kidding." He wasn't. "Join my communications firm. You'll be in-house, protected, and you'll rebuild your image with us. It's the only way to shift the narrative." Alina frowned. "You're offering me a job to clean up the mess you helped create?" "I'm offering you control," he corrected, "and a paycheck." Despite herself, she laughed. "So this is what protection looks like. Corporate babysitting." His mouth curved slightly. "Call it whatever you need to, but it's better than hiding." And as much as she hated to admit it, he was right. The world already saw her as a scandal. Maybe it was time to rewrite the story from the inside. When she showed up at his company the next morning, every head turned. Whispers followed her down the hall like shadows. Still, when she caught Alexander watching her from the glass office above, something in her steadied. Whatever this was, it wasn't pity anymore. It was something much more dangerous. By the end of her first week, the office had already chosen sides. Some whispered she was a charity case. Others said she was the boss's secret affair. No one asked her directly, but the looks said everything. Alina learned to walk through the rumors like fog. See them, feel them, but never stop moving. In meetings, she kept her head down, focusing on work. Yet every time Alexander entered the room, conversations froze. It wasn't his power that silenced people. It was the way his eyes lingered on her, as if daring anyone to disrespect her again. Still, his protection came at a cost. Whispers became headlines, and headlines became judgment. Investors called for damage control. "You can't keep defending her," his legal counsel warned. "It's tanking public trust." Alexander didn't flinch. "Then maybe the public should question why they trust gossip over facts." The room went silent. In that moment, Alina realized his fight wasn't just about her. It was about himself, too. That night, she stayed late at the office, finding him still working. "You didn't have to defend me," she said quietly. He looked up. "I didn't do it for you." But his voice betrayed him. It was softer, almost human. For someone obsessed with control, he was losing it, one glance at a time. The rain hadn't stopped all evening, streaking the office windows in silver lines. Alina walked in with a stack of reports, expecting silence. But Alexander was still there, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, staring at the city like it held answers he couldn't find. "You should go home," he said without turning. "Home's overrated," she replied, setting the papers down. He gave a small laugh, the kind that sounded tired rather than amused. "You know, I used to be like you," he said. "Before all this. Before the money. The noise." She frowned. "Like me." He nodded. "I actually cared what people thought. I believed integrity mattered." His voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who'd lost too much along the way. "You haven't changed that much," she said softly. "You still care." He turned to face her. "No, Alina, you do. And somehow that's worse. You remind me of what I used to be, before I traded truth for strategy." The honesty hit harder than she expected. It wasn't a move or manipulation. It was real. They stood in silence, the hum of rain filling the space between them. She wanted to say something, anything, but couldn't. He broke the quiet instead. "Don't look at me like that," he said, half smiling. "You'll make me believe I can still be good." And maybe in that moment both of them already did. The next morning, Alina's phone exploded with notifications again. But this time, the betrayal cut deeper. Screenshots of fake messages between her and Alexander were everywhere. They painted her as manipulative, a gold digger blackmailing her billionaire boss for money. The source? Her ex. Ethan had finally gone for blood. Alexander's legal team rushed in with damage reports. "We can trace it back to him," one said. But the story's already viral. Investors pulled out, clients paused deals, and her name trended beside words she couldn't even repeat. It wasn't just a scandal now, it was destruction. She packed her things quietly before anyone could tell her to leave. By the time Alexander found her, she was already halfway out the door. "You think running fixes this?" he asked. "It's not your mess to clean up," she shot back. "It's mine." His expression softened, something breaking through the steel. "Not anymore." Before she could reply, he stepped into the spotlight, literally. That evening, he went live on national TV. "The messages are fake," he said, steady and unapologetic. "If anyone's to blame for this chaos, it's me." The press called it reckless. The board called it suicide. But for Alina, it was the first time someone had ever taken the hit, so she wouldn't have to bleed alone. After the storm, silence filled the penthouse again. Alina wandered through the hallways one night and noticed a door slightly open. A study she'd never entered before. Inside, stacks of documents and framed photos lined the shelves. But what caught her eye was a drawer labeled Donations. Curiosity won. Inside were receipts, massive anonymous donations to women's shelters across the city. Her breath caught. The amounts were staggering, the signatures discreet. Alexander Cole, the ruthless CEO the media loved to vilify, had been funding shelters for abuse survivors. Quietly. For years. She sat down, heart racing, realizing the irony. The man accused of using her had been protecting women who'd lived versions of her own story. He found her there minutes later. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. "Why hide it?" she asked. "Because people don't believe in good men who've done bad things." He paused, his gaze steady. "And maybe I'm still figuring out which one I am." His honesty hit her harder than any headline ever could. For the first time, she didn't see a billionaire or a savior. Just a man carrying his own scars differently. "You can't fix the world, Alexander," she said quietly. "No," he replied, stepping closer. "But I can start by protecting the people it keeps breaking." And somehow she believed him. The following week, Alexander walked into a board meeting that felt more like an ambush. The room was packed. Lawyers, shareholders, executives, all whispering his name like it was a scandal, not a title. One of them finally spoke up. "You've compromised the company, Alexander. This woman is costing us millions." He leaned back calmly. "Then maybe we built something too fragile to begin with." They handed him papers, formal notice of intent to remove him as CEO. The reason? Instability and loss of investor confidence. He scanned the page, not even pretending to care. "So this is what integrity costs," he said, signing the acknowledgement. He stood, buttoning his jacket like a man preparing for battle. "At least now I know the price." When Alina heard, she stormed into his office, furious. "You let them push you out because of me." He looked at her, expression steady. "Because of us. Don't flatter yourself, it's not all your fault." That hint of sarcasm made her laugh despite herself. "You're impossible. You're dangerous," he countered. "We make a great team." Still, when she left the room, the weight of it all hit her. He'd sacrificed everything to shield her from a world that never forgave mistakes, and she couldn't decide what scared her more, losing him or what she might feel if she didn't. Alina found Alexander sitting on the balcony, tie undone, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. "You really quit?" she asked, leaning on the doorway. He didn't look up. "Technically, they fired me. I just made it sound heroic." She laughed a little, crossing her arms. "You're ridiculous." "You're welcome," he shot back. "I just lost my company for you." "Then let me fix it," she said. "I'll leave, disappear, whatever it takes." He finally turned toward her. "If the truth ruins what I built, it wasn't worth keeping." The way he said it, calm, simple, made her pause. For a man obsessed with control, he looked strangely at peace, like he'd finally stopped pretending to care about everyone's approval. "You're either the craziest or the bravest man I've met," she said. "Maybe both," he smiled faintly. "You're not so bad yourself for someone who keeps turning my life upside down." She shook her head. "You did that all by yourself." Their eyes met, and for once, no one needed to say what they were both thinking. She sat beside him, stealing his drink without asking. "You're really okay with all this?" she asked. "Not even close," he said, "but you're here, so that helps." She laughed softly, looking out at the city lights. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it finally felt real. By morning, the whole city was buzzing. Alexander was everywhere. News, talk shows, even finance blogs that never cared about scandals. "You leaked everything?" Alina asked over coffee, trying to sound casual. "Technically, my lawyer did," he said, scrolling through headlines. "But I might have sent the files at 3 in the morning. You really don't like sleeping, do you?" she teased. "Not when I'm busy destroying empires." He looked up with that half smirk she was starting to recognize. "Besides, the board deserved it. They built their fortune on lies." She raised a brow. "And you're suddenly the good guy." "Let's not go that far," he said. "I'm just cleaning up my own mess." When the press called Alina the woman who helped expose corporate corruption, she laughed so hard she almost choked on her toast. "You realize they just turned me into your partner in crime?" "Could be worse," Alexander said. "You could still be running." She went quiet for a second, realizing he was right. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. He leaned back, watching her smile. "You know," he said, "you're the only person who's ever told me I'm wrong and lived to tell the story." She grinned. "Give it time, Cole. I'm just getting started." He laughed, shaking his head. For a man who'd lost everything, he looked like someone who'd finally found something worth keeping. The press couldn't get enough of them. One week, Alexander was the fallen CEO. The next, the man who rebuilt his empire with honesty. Every talk show wanted a piece of the story. Alina, who once avoided cameras, now sat beside him during interviews, answering questions with calm confidence that even surprised her. When one host asked if they were together, she blinked. "Professionally or emotionally?" The audience laughed, and even Alexander cracked a smile. "Let's just say," he said smoothly, "we're still figuring out the job description." The clip went viral, and suddenly their chemistry became part of the redemption arc people couldn't stop watching. Behind the scenes, it wasn't as glamorous. They spent hours preparing statements, reviewing footage, trying to stay one step ahead of the media. "You know this feels like a reality show, right?" Alina joked during one of their late-night briefings. "Except we don't win any money." "Speak for yourself," he said. "My PR firm is making a fortune." Still, something was different now. The rumors didn't sting like before, and the scandal didn't define her. People started sending messages. Not hate this time, but gratitude. Women from all over wrote things like, "You made me stop apologizing for leaving." That's when Alina realized she wasn't the story anymore. She'd become the lesson. Alexander noticed it too. "You're handling this better than I am," he said one morning. "You used to panic when someone recognized you." "Yeah," she said, smiling. "Now I just wave." He looked at her for a second too long before saying, "You have no idea how strong you are." It wasn't a line, it was truth. Their apology tour ended in a packed press conference. Alexander took the stage first, owning every mistake with brutal honesty. When it was her turn, Alina spoke simply. "I'm not perfect," she said, "but I'm done letting fear tell my story." The room went quiet, cameras clicking like applause. Even Alexander looked stunned. Afterward, they slipped away from the flashing lights to the back of the hotel. "You were incredible," he said. "You too," she answered, smiling. "You didn't even curse once on live TV." He laughed, shaking his head. "Guess I'm growing." "Careful," she teased. "People might start liking you." As they stepped outside, the night air felt lighter. For the first time, there were no reporters waiting, no questions hanging over them. Just two people walking side by side. No script, no cameras, no need to prove anything. "So," she said, bumping his shoulder. "What's next?" He smiled. "Something we don't have to apologize for." The news broke early in the morning. Ethan had been exposed. Leaked recordings, emails, even witness statements from women he'd manipulated over the years. Every outlet that once painted him as the victim now ran headlines calling him a fraud and a predator. Alina watched the coverage from the office break room, barely touching her coffee. "It's over," Alexander said, standing behind her. "You don't have to look anymore." She didn't answer right away. "It's strange," she said finally. "I thought I'd feel free." He nodded. You are free. You just haven't realized it yet. It wasn't some grand pep talk, just simple truth, and somehow that made it hit harder. For the first time, she didn't feel fear. She just felt tired of letting the past take up space in her head. That afternoon, she stepped outside alone, walking through Midtown without a hat or sunglasses. No one followed, no cameras, no reporters, no whispers, just the sound of traffic and her own footsteps. For months, she'd lived in hiding. Now she just blended in, and it felt like peace. Later, back at the office, Alexander leaned against her desk. "So, what do you do when the bad guy finally loses?" he asked. "Take a nap," she said, smiling. "Or maybe start over." He grinned. "You say that like you're not already doing it." She shrugged. "Maybe I needed the reminder." That night, the city lights looked different, less like spotlights, more like a skyline full of second chances. She wasn't the woman from the scandal anymore, or the girl running from her ex. She was just Alina, and for the first time, that was enough. Alexander found her on the terrace, leaning against the glass railing. "Feels good, doesn't it?" he asked. She looked up at him, smiling. "Yeah, it really does. No cameras, no chaos, just quiet, and the kind of calm that comes when you finally stop being afraid." Months passed, and life finally slowed down. The headlines faded, the noise disappeared. And for the first time, Alina wasn't defined by a scandal. She'd rebuilt her career quietly, consulting for non-profits that helped women restart their lives. "You really turned chaos into a business," Alexander said one morning when she dropped by his new office. "Guess I learned from the best," she replied with a grin. His company had survived the storm, smaller but stronger. The investors who stayed believed in his transparency, and the new foundation he'd launched carried her name. "You didn't have to do that," she told him once. "I know," he said simply. "That's why I wanted to." She didn't argue. She'd stopped trying to talk him out of doing the right thing. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Coffee runs, late calls, sarcastic comments that somehow always turned into something softer. "You realize we work better when we're not fighting?" he said one afternoon. "Don't ruin it by sounding sentimental," she teased, nudging his arm. He laughed, the kind of laugh that made her forget how serious he used to be. Still, there were moments when the quiet between them felt charged, like both were waiting for the other to say something first. "You're here a lot," he said one night as she packed up her laptop. "You complaining?" "Not exactly." He paused. "Just noticing." She smiled. "Then stop noticing." He shook his head, smirking. "Not a chance." The city outside kept moving, but their pace was slower now, calmer, more intentional. Alina had stopped running. Alexander had stopped hiding behind control. They weren't trying to fix each other anymore. They were just learning how to exist in the same space without breaking it. One morning she brought him a cup of coffee before he asked. "You're starting to read my mind," he said. "Or maybe you're just predictable," she teased. "Maybe both." He leaned on the desk, looking at her like she was something solid in a world that still shifted too fast. "You know you don't owe me anything, right?" "I know," she said, meeting his eyes. "That's why I'm still here." It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, honest, and exactly enough. He didn't reply, but the small smile that followed said everything he didn't. For the first time, there were no headlines, no fear, no pretending. Just two people who'd already lost enough to finally understand what staying meant. A clean slate, not to forget the past, but to build something better on top of it. It happened on a regular Tuesday, the kind of day that didn't look like it would change anything. Alina was reviewing files in the conference room when Alexander walked in, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, carrying 2 coffees. "You've been here since 7, he said. "You planning to move in?" She smirked. "I'd hate that." "Not necessarily," he said, setting the cup beside her. She looked up, a little thrown off by his tone. "You sound different," she said. "Less bossy, more human." He grinned. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my image." She shook her head, laughing. "Too late. I've already seen through it." Their eyes met for a second too long, enough to make her forget what she was supposed to say next. That night, they stayed late, reviewing proposals that didn't matter anymore. When she closed her laptop, he was still looking at her. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked quietly. "All the time," she said. "But somehow, I'm still here." "Why?" She shrugged. "Because for once, I'm not running." He took a step closer. "You don't need protection anymore, Alina." "I know," she said. "That's not why I'm staying." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was clear, like both of them finally understood something that had been building for months. "I used to think love was control," he said, "keeping everything perfect, predictable." She smiled faintly. "How's that working out for you?" "Terribly," he admitted. "But you make chaos look kind of worth it." She laughed, shaking her head. That's the worst compliment I've ever gotten. Good, he said. Means it's real. For a man who lived on logic, he didn't sound logical at all. You're serious? She asked. Completely. You sure this isn't another PR strategy? He stepped closer again. If it is, it's my favorite one. She rolled her eyes, but her smile gave her away. When he finally kissed her, it wasn't dramatic. It was easy, familiar. The kind of moment that didn't need music or lighting to matter. It just made sense. Two people who had every reason to give up, choosing not to. Later, as they watched the city lights through the window, Alina leaned her head on his shoulder. So this is what freedom feels like, she said. Not running, not hiding, just choosing. He nodded. Yeah, he said softly. Choosing each other. Sometimes life throws you into chaos just to make you see what you've been running from. Alina's story wasn't about luck or money. It was about timing, choices, and finally stopping long enough to realize she didn't need saving anymore. But what about you? Have you ever trusted someone you barely knew, just because it felt safer than the world you came from? Or found yourself standing in front of someone who changed everything without meaning to? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in her place? Would you have trusted a stranger that night or kept running? And if you enjoy stories like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. There's always another story waiting that might just hit closer than you expect.